The crystal towers of Zephyria Prime stretched toward the purple sky like giant spears made of light. Inside the largest tower, 12 different alien species sat around a massive circular table. The air buzzed with tension as translators worked to convert dozens of alien languages into something everyone could understand. Lisa Grant stood in the center of the room, her hands clasped behind her back. She was the only human in the chamber, and she felt the weight of every alien gaze upon her. Her blue diplomatic uniform felt heavy on her shoulders as she waited for the charges to be read. The Veltar counselor rose from his seat, his blue skin shimmering under the artificial lights. His voice was cold and sharp when he spoke. The human species stands accused of aggressive expansion, violation of treaty boundaries, and poses a clear threat to galactic peace. Lisa kept her face calm, but inside her heart was racing. She had known this day would come, but hoping and knowing were two different things. Around the table, representatives from the other species nodded their agreement. The insect-like Zik clicked their mandibles in what she recognized as approval. The floating gas beings called Ethrons pulsed with darker colors. Ambassador Grant, the Veltar continued, your species has established colonies in 17 systems without proper authorization. Your traders have been caught smuggling weapons to 3 different war zones. Your explorers have entered forbidden space 47 times in the past year alone. Lisa stepped forward. Honored counselors, humans are naturally curious. We explore because we want to learn, not because we want to conquer. Our colonies are built on empty worlds that no one else wanted. Our traders sell tools and medicine, not weapons. The Zik representative made a harsh buzzing sound. Your people breed too fast. You expand too quickly. You ask too many questions about things that should remain secret. A low rumble came from the Rockman delegate, his stone-like face showing no emotion. Humans do not respect authority. They make their own rules. Lisa felt her anger rising but forced herself to stay calm. We respect the laws of the Council, but we also believe in freedom. We believe beings should be allowed to make their own choices about their lives. The Ethran representative's body flashed bright red. That kind of thinking is exactly why you are dangerous. Order must be maintained. The galaxy has been peaceful for 3,000 years because everyone knows their place, and humans refuse to stay in theirs, the Veltar added. For the next 2 hours, Lisa argued for her species. She spoke about human achievements in medicine, about the art and music humans had shared with other species, about the technological advances that had benefited everyone. She reminded them of the human colonies that had sent food to the Zik when their homeworld faced famine, and the human scientists who had helped cure the plague that nearly wiped out the Aqualand species. But she could see in their alien faces that her words were falling on deaf ears. The decision had been made long before this trial began. The Veltar counselor called for the vote. One by one, each species cast their judgment. The Zik voted for exile. The Ethrons voted for exile. The Rockmen, the Crystalline Collective, the Void Swimmers, the Plant Mind Unity, the Energy Beings, the Hive Mothers, the Star Whales, and even the usually neutral Watchers all voted the same way. The decision is unanimous, the Veltar announced. The human species will be relocated to Kepler 442c effective immediately. Lisa felt the blood drain from her face. She had heard whispers about Kepler 442c. The aliens called it a Deathworld, a place where nothing could survive for long. You cannot be serious. That world will kill us all. That is not our concern. The Veltar replied coldly. You have 30 days to gather your people. Transport ships will be provided. 3 weeks later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the transport ship Horizon's Edge, staring out at the stars. Behind him, 10,000 humans slept in cryogenic pods, unaware of where they were being taken. They had been told they were being relocated to a new colony world, a fresh start for humanity. The truth was far more grim. Jake had volunteered to stay awake during the journey along with a skeleton crew of 20 others. Someone had to make sure the ship stayed on course. Someone had to monitor the sleeping colonists. And someone had to witness what was likely humanity's final chapter. Dr. Amy Bell, the expedition's chief medical officer, joined him at the observation deck. Her face was pale and tired. She had been working around the clock to make sure the colonists would survive the long journey. "How much longer?" she asked. Jake checked his instruments. 14 months, give or take a few weeks. Amy nodded and was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I've been reading about Kepler 442c. The radiation levels alone should kill us within days of landing." "Maybe that's the point," Jake replied bitterly. "The atmospheric pressure is 3 times Earth normal. The native predators are larger than anything that ever lived on our world, and the storms last for months at a time." Jake turned to look at her. "Are you having second thoughts about volunteering for this?" Amy shook her head. "No. If humanity is going to die, at least we'll die together. But I keep thinking about the children in those pods. They don't deserve this." Through the viewport, Jake could see other transport ships in the distance, each one carrying thousands more humans. Every person left on Earth was aboard these ships, refugees in their own galaxy. The aliens had been thorough in their exile, making sure not a single human remained in civilized space. The months passed slowly. Jake found himself spending more and more time staring out at the stars, wondering if any of them had planets where humans might have been welcome. But those thoughts only made the ache in his chest worse. When they finally arrived at Kepler 442c, Jake's first sight of their new home made his stomach turn. The planet looked like a vision of hell itself. Red, continents were covered in massive storm systems that never seemed to end. Black oceans reflected an angry sky filled with 3 different colored auroras, each one a sign of deadly radiation that would slowly poison anyone exposed to it. The landing was rough. The atmospheric storms buffeted their ships like toys, and 2 of the smaller transports were lost during descent. But somehow most of the fleet made it to the surface. As Jake stepped out of his ship and breathed the alien air for the first time, he felt the radiation tingling against his skin even through his protective suit. In the distance, something roared, a sound so deep and powerful that it seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet. This was humanity's new home. This was where they would make their last stand. 3 years had passed since the humans first set foot on Kepler 442c. What started as 10,000 people had become much less. The first winter alone killed 2,000 when creatures called shadow maws crawled up from deep caves beneath the ground. These monsters had claws that could cut through steel like paper, and their howls could be heard for miles across the red wasteland. Dr. Amy Bell worked in the medical center of New Haven, the only human settlement left on the planet. Her hands moved quickly as she checked on little Tommy Chen, a 5-year-old boy who had been born on Earth but was growing up in this harsh world. What she saw made her write furious notes in her medical journal. Tommy's bones were becoming denser and stronger than any human bones should be. When he fell from a tree last week, he should have broken his arm. Instead, the tree branch broke and Tommy walked away without a scratch. His blood test showed changes that should have been impossible. Amy looked at her own hands and noticed the changes in herself too. Her fingernails had grown thicker and harder. Her eyes could see clearly in the dark caves where they stored their food. When danger was near, she could feel it in her bones before her mind understood what was happening. Outside the settlement walls, Sergeant Nick Torres led a hunting party through the area they called the Crimson Wastes. The land was red like dried blood, and strange plants grew there that could eat metal. Nick moved quietly through the alien landscape, followed by 5 other hunters. They were tracking ironhide bears, massive creatures that stood 12 feet, tall and had fur that looked like metal wire. Regular bullets bounced off these animals like throwing pebbles at a tank, but Nick and his team had learned to make weapons from materials they found on this world. Nick crouched behind a red rock formation and watched the bear pack through his binoculars. There were 7 of them, including 1 alpha male that was even bigger than the others. 3 years ago, seeing these creatures would have meant running away as fast as possible. Now, Nick felt his heart beating steady and calm. He gave hand signals to his team, and they spread out in perfect formation. They moved without making any sound, their boots finding the right spots on the rocky ground without looking. It was like they could read each other's minds. The attack came swift and deadly. Nick jumped straight up in the air, higher than any human should be able to jump. and landed on the alpha bear's back. His spear, made from shadow maw bone and sharpened to a razor point, went through the creature's thick hide and into its heart. The other hunters took down the remaining bears with the same deadly efficiency. When it was over, Nick stood among the fallen creatures and felt no surprise at what they had accomplished. This was normal now. This was what humans had become. Back in the settlement, engineer Carol Smith worked in her workshop on humanity's first spacecraft built entirely from local materials. The ship looked nothing like the vessels that had brought them from Earth. Instead of straight lines and sharp angles, this ship had curves that seemed to flow like water. The hull was made from processed shadow maw shell, and the engines ran on refined bear blood mixed with crushed crystal from the cave systems. Carol ran her hand along the ship's surface and felt it warm under her touch. The vessel seemed alive, responding to her presence like a faithful pet. She had built it using knowledge that seemed to come from nowhere, as if the planet itself was teaching her how to create things that could survive in this hostile environment. The children who had been born on Kepler 442c were even more changed than the adults. 10-year-old Kevin Walsh could run faster than the fastest human athlete from Earth. He could see in complete darkness and hear sounds from miles away. But most amazing of all, he seemed to know when the planet's weather was going to change days. Before it happened, "Big storm coming," Kevin told his mother one morning while eating breakfast made from processed local plants. 3 days from now. Really big one. His mother, Susan Walsh, had learned to trust her son's predictions. She immediately went to tell the settlement leaders, and everyone began preparing for severe weather. When the storm hit exactly 3 days later, the winds were strong enough to lift buildings off the ground, but New Haven was ready. During the storm, something strange happened. As the winds howled around their reinforced shelters, the humans inside felt connected to each other in ways they had never experienced before. Susan could sense her husband's emotions even though he was in a different building. Carol could feel the fear and excitement of children she had never met. Dr. Amy Bell made careful notes about these experiences. She was beginning to understand that the radiation from Kepler 442c was not just changing their bodies, it was changing how their minds worked together. Humans were becoming something new, something that could share thoughts and feelings across distances. The proof came during a shadow maw attack near the end of the 3rd year. A pack of the creatures broke through the settlement's outer defenses at night. But instead of panic and confusion, every human in New Haven responded as if they were part of a single organism. Hunters grabbed their weapons and moved to defensive positions without being told. Families with children evacuated to safe areas in perfect order. Medical teams prepared for wounded before the fighting even began. The battle lasted only 20 minutes. When it was over, all 15 shadow maws were dead, and only 3 humans had minor injuries. Nick Torres stood among the defeated creatures and realized that something fundamental had changed. They were no longer the same species that had been exiled from Earth. They were becoming something else entirely. Something adapted for survival in impossible conditions. The planet that was supposed to kill them was instead teaching them how to become unstoppable. 7 years had passed since humans first landed on Kepler 442c. The population had stopped shrinking and settled at 4,000 survivors. But these were not the same humans who had left Earth. They had become something completely new and powerful. Commander Rachel Stone stood on top of the spire of New Haven, a tower that reached 2 miles high into the poisonous sky. The tower was built from crystallized shadow maw bone, a material stronger than any metal from Earth. From this height, Rachel could see all 3 of the planet's moons at the same time, and she knew that humans now lived on each one. Rachel's eyes had changed the most. They glowed with a soft blue light in the darkness, and she could see things that were hundreds of miles away. When she looked at the nearest moon, she could actually see the human settlements there, tiny dots of light, against the gray surface. But the most amazing change was not in her eyes or her strength. It was in her mind. Rachel could feel the thoughts and emotions of every other human on the planet and the moons. When someone was happy, she felt their joy. When someone was in danger, she felt their fear. All 4,000 humans were connected. like parts of the same giant brain. Dr. Peter Kane worked in his laboratory deep inside the spire, trying to understand what had happened to them. He had been a simple biology teacher on Earth, but now he was making discoveries that would have amazed the greatest scientists in human history. The breakthrough came when Peter realized that the planet's deadly radiation did not just change their bodies. It created invisible connections between every living thing that had been exposed to it. The radiation worked like tiny threads that linked all human minds together. "We are not just individuals anymore," Peter said to his research team. "We are becoming a single organism that thinks with 4,000 brains." This new ability was put to the test when alien visitors arrived unexpectedly. A Veltar probe ship appeared in orbit around Kepler 4042c, sent to check if the humans were finally dead. The aliens expected to find nothing but bones and empty settlements. Instead, they found something that terrified them. The probe never got close to the planet. As soon as it entered the outer atmosphere, a swarm of human ships rose up to meet it. These were not the crude vessels that had been built in Carol Smith's workshop. These were living ships that seemed to grow rather than being constructed. Linda Hayes piloted the lead ship in the swarm. She had been a cargo hauler on Earth, moving boxes and packages from one place to another. Now she commanded a vessel that was part machine and part living creature. The ship's hull could repair itself when damaged, and it could change shape, to become faster or more deadly as needed. When Linda spoke to her squadron, her words were heard instantly by pilots on all 3 moons. Distance meant nothing to human communication anymore. They shared thoughts at the speed of light across the entire star system. The alien probe tried to escape, but it was hopeless. The human ships moved like a school of fish, turning and diving, in perfect coordination. They knew what the probe would do before its own computer had finished calculating the next move. But the humans did not destroy the probe. Instead, they did something much more frightening. They captured it. Within hours, the probe had been completely taken apart and studied. The humans learned everything about Veltar technology, their weapons, their defenses, and most importantly, the location of their homeworld. The probe's final transmission back to Veltar space showed images that would haunt the aliens for years to come. They saw human cities floating in the poisonous air of Kepler 442c, held up by technology that seemed to blend machine and living tissue. They saw massive creatures that humans rode like horses, beasts that had been tamed and trained to serve their new masters. Most disturbing of all, they saw humans walking on the planet's surface without any protective gear. Their skin glowed with the same deadly radiation that was supposed to kill them, but instead of dying, they seemed to draw strength from it. The city of New Haven had grown into something magnificent and terrible. Buildings grew from the ground, like giant trees, their walls made from materials that were alive and constantly changing. Streets moved and shifted to carry people where they needed to go. The entire city responded to the needs and wishes of its inhabitants like a loyal pet. Children played in parks, where the grass was made from crystallized energy, and the trees bore fruit that could heal injuries instantly. These children could fly short distances by controlling the gravitational fields around their bodies. They could speak to the planet's native creatures and convince them to help with various tasks. Rachel Stone walked through these living streets and felt the pulse of 4,000 human hearts beating in rhythm with her own. She could sense the satisfaction of farmers growing food in underground caverns, the excitement of explorers mapping new cave systems, and the joy of engineers creating impossible machines. But she could also sense something else, a hunger, a need to grow and expand, beyond this single world. The humans had not just survived their exile, they had thrived beyond all expectations. They had become something that the galaxy had never seen before, a species that could adapt to any environment and turn even the most hostile world into a paradise. The Veltar had sent them to a Deathworld, expecting them to die quietly. Instead, they had created a new form of life that was stronger, smarter, and more unified than anything that had come before. And now that they had mastered their prison, they were ready to return to the stars. 15 years after the exile began, a single ship appeared at the edge of Veltar space. The vessel was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Its hull seemed to breathe like a living creature, and strange patterns of light moved across its surface like blood flowing through veins. When the Veltar sensors tried to scan it, the ship absorbed their energy beams and grew brighter. The ship's name appeared on their screens: Earth's Answer. No human ship had ever carried that name, and the Veltar military commanders felt a chill of fear run through their blue-skinned bodies. Admiral Paul Davis sat in the captain's chair, but he looked nothing like the humans the Veltar remembered. His skin had a soft glow that pulsed with his heartbeat. His eyes reflected light like a cat's eyes, and when he spoke, his voice carried strange harmonics that made the ship's walls vibrate. Paul was not alone. 50 other humans worked on the bridge around him, but they moved with such perfect coordination that they seemed like parts of a single machine. When one person reached for a control, another would already be adjusting the systems needed to support that action. The ship's arrival sent panic through the Veltar defense fleet. Their most advanced scanners could not penetrate its hull. Their targeting computers could not lock onto its position. Most frightening of all, the ship seemed to know what they were going to do before they did it. When the Veltar fired a warning shot, the human ship's hull simply opened like a flower and absorbed the energy blast. The absorbed energy made the ship grow larger and more powerful. Captain Susan Lee, Paul's second-in-command, opened communications with the Veltar homeworld. Her message was broadcast to every Veltar ship and station in the system. Her voice was calm and friendly, but underneath the words was a strength that made the aliens tremble. "Hello, old friends," Susan said. "You wanted to know what happened to humanity. We came back to show you." The demonstration began immediately. The human ship released a cloud of microscopic organisms that looked like tiny sparks of light. These organisms spread through space faster than the Veltar ships could retreat. Within minutes, every electronic system in the alien fleet was infected. The Veltar admiral watched in horror as his own ship's computers began changing. The screens showed new patterns and symbols that his crew did not recognize. The weapons systems started operating by themselves, turning away from the human ship and pointing at other Veltar vessels. But the humans did not use the captured weapons to destroy the alien fleet. Instead, they did something much more disturbing. They began to improve the ships. The hull of the Veltar flagship started to change. Metal panels grew smoother and more curved. New weapons sprouted from the ship's sides like branches growing from a tree. The engines became more powerful and efficient. In less than an hour, the alien vessel had become something completely different. Dr. Mary Johnson, humanity's chief science officer, spoke directly to the terrified Veltar admiral. Her words were transmitted directly into his mind, bypassing his ship's communication systems entirely. "Do not be afraid," Mary said, though her voice carried power that made it clear fear was a reasonable response. "We are not here for revenge. We are here to offer you a gift." Mary explained what had happened to humanity on Kepler 442c. The deadly radiation had not killed them. Instead, it had connected them to the planet itself. They had learned to work with the world's dangerous ecosystem instead of fighting against it. "We formed a partnership with our environment," Mary continued. "The planet taught us how to grow and change and adapt. We became something new, something better than what we were before." The Veltar admiral's voice shook when he responded. "What do you want from us?" "We want to share what we learned," Mary answered. "Your people have been the same for thousands of years. You have not grown or changed or improved. You are stuck in old patterns that limit what you can become." Paul Davis stood up from his captain's chair and walked to the front of the bridge. Even though he was speaking to aliens on a different ship, his presence filled their command center, as if he was standing right next to them. "The universe is vast and full of dangers you cannot imagine," Paul said. "There are forces out there that could destroy entire civilizations without effort. Your current technology and your current way of thinking will not be enough to survive what is coming." Susan Lee added her voice to Paul's. "But we can teach you how to adapt. We can show you how to become stronger and more flexible. We can help you evolve." The offer was simple but revolutionary. Humanity would share their transformation process with any species willing to undergo the same changes they had experienced. The aliens would not be forced to change, but those who chose evolution would become part of something greater than themselves. The first response came from an unexpected source. A small Aqualand ship broke away from the main alien fleet and approached the human vessel. The Aqualands were fish-like creatures whose homeworld was dying from pollution and overpopulation. The Aqualand captain sent a simple message. Our world is sick. Our people are dying. If you can help us, we accept your offer. Within days, human biotechnology was being deployed throughout Aqualand's space. The dying oceans of their homeworld began to heal themselves. Pollutants were transformed into nutrients. Dead coral reefs came back to life and grew larger and more beautiful than ever before. The transformation was not just environmental. The Aqualands themselves began to change. Their gills became more efficient, allowing them to survive in both water and air. Their scales developed the ability to filter toxins from their environment. Most importantly, they began to feel the same mental connection that linked all humans together. Other species watched these changes with growing interest and fear. The rigid Veltar Empire tried to forbid contact with humanity, but their own citizens began to ask why they should remain weak. When strength was being offered freely, the galaxy was about to change in ways that no one could have predicted. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council took place in the same crystal chamber, where humanity had been condemned 15 years earlier. But everything was different now. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension, as representatives from all 12 species gathered once again. Ambassador Lisa Grant entered the chamber, but she was no longer the same woman who had pleaded for humanity's survival. Her skin glowed with soft inner light, and when she walked, the crystal floor beneath her feet resonated with musical tones. The alien delegates instinctively stepped back as she passed, sensing a power that made their primitive instincts scream warnings. Lisa took her place in the center of the room, just as she had 15 years before. But now she was not alone. Though no other humans were physically present, her voice carried the combined wisdom and strength of her entire species. Honored counselors, Lisa began, her words seeming to come from everywhere at once. We have returned as promised. The Veltar counselor, his blue skin pale with fear, spoke first. What guarantee do we have that you will not simply conquer us? Your power is beyond anything we have ever seen. Lisa smiled, and for a moment, every delegate in the room felt a warmth they had never experienced before. It was like being embraced by a loving parent or finding safety after a long journey through dangerous territory. Conquest is the desire of species that fear scarcity, Lisa replied. We have learned that the universe provides abundance to those who know how to work with it instead of against it. We are not interested in ruling you. We are interested in helping you grow. The Zik representative clicked his mandibles nervously. Your offer of transformation sounds like another word for extinction. If we change, will we still be ourselves? The Aqualands asked the same question, Lisa answered. Let them speak for themselves. A holographic image appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the Aqualand homeworld, but it looked nothing like the dying planet the council remembered. Crystal-clear oceans stretched to the horizon, teeming with life forms that sparkled like living jewels. Cities floated gracefully on the waves, their architecture a perfect blend of technology and natural beauty. An Aqualand delegate materialized in the chamber, but this being was transformed. Her scales shimmered with rainbow colors, and she moved with a grace that seemed to defy gravity. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made the listeners feel peaceful and hopeful. I am still Aqualand, she said, but I am also more than I was before. I can feel the health of every ocean on my world. I can communicate with sea creatures that were once beyond our understanding. Most importantly, I am connected to my people in ways that have ended all conflict and brought perfect cooperation. The Rockman delegate rumbled deep in his chest. What about species that do not wish to change? Will you force transformation upon us? Lisa shook her head. Force creates resistance. We learned that on our world of exile. The planet did not force us to change. It simply provided opportunities for growth, and we chose to take them. Any species that wishes to remain as they are will be left in peace. But even as she spoke, changes were already spreading through the galaxy. The Veltar Empire was discovering that many of their citizens were secretly traveling to human space seeking transformation. Young Veltar were especially drawn to the idea of evolution, tired of their species' rigid traditions and unchanging ways. The Ethran representative pulsed with angry red light. "You are destroying the natural order. For 3,000 years, the galaxy has been stable because every species knew their place. Stability built on fear is not true peace," Lisa replied. "It is stagnation. The universe is constantly growing and changing. Species that refuse to adapt will eventually be left behind." Over the following months, the transformation spread like a gentle wave across known space. The Crystalline Collective discovered that human biotechnology could help them grow new crystal formations that were both beautiful and incredibly strong. The plant-mind unity found that human knowledge allowed them to create forests that could survive in the vacuum of space. Even some of the more resistant species began to change their minds. When the Void Swimmers faced a plague that threatened to wipe out their entire race, they reluctantly accepted human help. The cure not only saved them, but gave them the ability to survive in environments that had previously been impossible for them to enter. The Veltar held out the longest, but eventually even they could not resist the changes happening around them. Their rigid blue skin became more flexible and colorful. Their hierarchical society transformed into something fluid and cooperative. Most surprising of all, they became some of humanity's most devoted allies. Back on Kepler 442c, now called Haven by its inhabitants, the original human settlers watched as representatives from across the galaxy arrived to undergo transformation. The planet that was meant to be their grave had become the birthplace of galactic evolution. Commander Jake Morrison, now ancient by normal human standards but kept vital by the planet's influence, stood with his great-granddaughter Emma Torres as she prepared to lead humanity's next great adventure. Emma was born on Haven and had never known any other world, but she carried within her the dreams and memories of Earth. "The Andromeda Galaxy has sent signals," Emma told her great-grandfather. "There are civilizations there that have heard about what we accomplished. They want to learn from us." Jake smiled and placed his hand on Emma's shoulder. "Your great-grandmother Lisa would be proud. She always said that humans were meant to explore and teach, not conquer and destroy." Emma's ship, the Unstoppable Truth, was the most advanced vessel humanity had ever created. It was grown rather than built, a living organism that could adapt to any environment it encountered. As she prepared for departure, Emma felt the mental connection to every human in the galaxy, offering support and love for her journey. The ship rose from Haven's surface and pointed toward the distant stars of Andromeda. As it disappeared into hyperspace, it carried a message that would be transmitted to any species that might be listening. "There is no such thing as a death world," the message said. "There are only worlds waiting to teach you how to transcend your limitations. Growth is possible for any species willing to embrace change. The universe is vast and full of opportunities for those brave enough to evolve." Humanity had been exiled to die, but what returned was something the galaxy had never imagined. They brought not conquest, but transformation. Not destruction, but evolution. They had learned the greatest lesson of all, that survival was not about being the strongest or the most aggressive, but about being willing to change and grow and become something better than what you were before.